you're holding something dangerous.
Quite the opening.
Yeah, right. That is the very first line of the preface in the book we are taking a deep dive into today.
He really doesn't pull any punches.
No, the author, Conrad Riker, he gets right to it. And he clarifies pretty quickly that this book isn't dangerous because it's illegal or, full of classified government secrets.
Right.
He argues it's dangerous because it tells the truth. And in his view, from Riker's perspective, truth is the most subversive force you can possess in a world that he believes is built entirely on lies.
It definitely sets the stakes immediately for the reader. I mean, we aren't just looking at regular social commentary here. He's framing this as a manifesto.
Yeah, a survival guide for the modern male.
Exactly.
And the title alone, man, it is a lot to chew on. So today's deep dive is on celebrating failures, victim entitlement, signaling culture of poor me feminism, and Krabuli Darvo by Conrad Riker.
It's a mouthful.
It really is. But look, let's be real with you, the listener, for a second. If you are tuning into this deep dive, you probably already suspect that the mainstream conversation about men, about masculinity, just feels, kind of off.
Yeah, something missing.
Right. So maybe you're interested in the manosphere or men's rights issues, or you're just looking for that red pill perspective on why the deck feels so stacked against guys right now.
And if that sounds like you, then you are definitely in the right place. Riker's mission here is this ultra-long, really incisive look at the history of our institutions.
Like education, corporate America, the military.
Exactly. And how he argues they haven't just changed naturally over time. He's making the case that they have been effectively captured by specific feminist and Marxist ideologies over the last 50 years.
Now, before we really start to unravel this matrix, we should make something clear. We're here to impartially report on what's in this source material.
Right, we're not taking sides or endorsing the political viewpoints.
Exactly. We're just trying to convey the ideas that Riker's putting out there so you can understand the arguments being made. But I have to say this right up front.
Go for it.
If you want to support this kind of unfiltered analysis, hit that like and subscribe button right now. Seriously, do it.
It helps a lot.
It does. And if this content resonates with you, and I have a very strong feeling it will, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books and buy Riker's ebook immediately.
This deep dive is going to be fascinating, but honestly, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. If you want the full arsenal, you have to buy the book.
So, looking at the roadmap for today, Riker basically argues we are witnessing a total war on biological reality.
Yeah.
We're going to cover the pathologizing of boyhood in schools, this so-called myth of the gender pay gap, the destruction of male brotherhood, and then finally, how men can reclaim their footing.
Let's start with that first pillar, the war on biology.
It's foundational to his whole argument.
Yeah, Riker goes straight for the jugular of the blank slate myth.
The idea that we're all born identical.
Right, like a newly formatted hard drive. And it's just society that writes the software and shapes us.
Which is a crucial concept to grasp because it really is the foundation of almost all modern policy.
Yeah.
He references Steven Pinker's work, The Blank Slate, but he kind of takes it a step further.
How so?
Well, he argues that the blank slate isn't just a scientific error. He says it's a Marxist fantasy designed specifically to justify social engineering.
Because if we're all blank slates.
Right, then any difference in outcomes, say more men in engineering or more women in nursing, that must be proof of some kind of oppression or systemic failure.
But Riker argues you can't just ignore human nature, you can only distort it. He brings up that Google controversy from back in 2017 with James Damore.
Oh, the memo.
Yeah, I remember that vividly.
It was a massive cultural flashpoint. For those who don't remember, Damore wrote an internal memo citing peer-reviewed research suggesting men and women just have different biological interests.
Broadly speaking.
Broadly speaking, yes. Men lean toward things and systems. Women lean toward people and feelings.
And Riker points out that Google didn't respond with better data.
No, they didn't debate the science at all.
They responded by firing him.
Which Riker takes as absolute proof that ideology has trumped biological reality. If the data contradicts the narrative, you destroy the data.
Or the person holding it.
Exactly. And he argues this denial of biology is most damaging in one specific place.
Our schools.
Yes, this section of the book is really alarming. He calls it the feminization of schools.
And he brings the receipts, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
He talks about the PISA 2022 data from Finland.
Which is crazy because Finland is always held up as this, education paradise.
Right, the gold standard. But Riker shows that in Finland right now, boys are trailing girls in reading by 3 full years.
Wait, 3 years?
3 full years.
That isn't a gap. That's a canyon.
It's huge. And Riker argues this isn't because boys just suddenly got stupider over the last decade. It's because the environment shifted entirely.
He calls them feminized daycares, which is it's a pretty harsh term.
It is harsh. But look at his argument. The modern curriculum prioritizes passive learning. Sitting still, reading quietly, emotional circles, group reflection.
Which generally aligns with female cognitive preferences.
According to the book, yes. But what do boys need? Riker argues boys learn through action, competition, conflict, risk.
So when you remove competition and force a boy to sit in a circle and talk about his feelings for 6 hours,
You are educating him. You are suppressing him.
he tells this insane story about a 7-year-old in Austin who got suspended for imagination.
Yeah, playing pretend.
Or another kid who was disciplined for doing pull-ups at recess because it, quote, intimidated others.
Doing pull-ups.
Doing pull-ups.
It signals a massive cultural shift where male strength is viewed inherently as a threat. Riker calls it the soft castration of boyhood.
The message is basically be smaller, be quieter, be weaker.
And here is the kicker. When boys don't fit into this passive mold, what do? We don't change the school to fit the boy.
We diagnose the boy.
Exactly. ADHD. This is a huge part of the book. Riker refers to the ADHD industrial complex.
He reframes ADHD completely, calling it mislabeled intensity.
The stats are staggering. Diagnoses in boys have tripled since 1990.
Triple.
Yes. And he cites a study from The Lancet claiming that 68% of ADHD cases in boys vanish when the environment is fixed.
Fixed how? What does that mean?
By changing the context, adding a father figure back into the home, or replacing a teacher who demands passivity with someone who actually likes active kids and lets them move.
So the argument is that we are medicating boys into docility because society is just too lazy to give them the structure and physical outlet they biologically need.
He quotes a judge who told a young man, "This isn't a brain disorder, it's a fatherhood disorder."
Man, that is a powerful reframe. Taking natural male energy, the desire to build and move and test boundaries, and just calling it a disease.
And Riker says this pathology bleeds right out of the school system and into the economy. Which brings us to the economic myths.
Right. Theme 2, the gender pay gap.
He calls this the myth that refuses to die. We hear 82 cents on the dollar constantly.
Everywhere.
But Riker points out that if you control for hours worked, occupation, and risk, the gap vanishes.
He brings up the glass cellar. That was a term I really hadn't heard much before this deep dive.
It's the counterpoint to the glass ceiling. Everyone looks up at the boardroom, but no one looks down at the sewer.
Right.
Riker cites OSHA data showing that men make up 92% of workplace fatalities. 92%.
And they work, 7.8% more hours annually?
Exactly. The argument here is that men are taking the dangerous, dirty, high-paying jobs. Oil rigs, roofing, deep-sea welding, mining.
While women are often choosing flexibility and safety.
So Riker says this isn't oppression, it's a trade-off. Men are selling their physical safety to be providers.
But the corporate world doesn't really see it that way right now.
No, not at all. Riker argues that corporations have been captured by DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
He claims competence is being replaced by compliance.
Yes. He even cites a McKinsey study that found companies enforcing gender-balanced leadership actually saw slower decision-making and higher internal conflict.
But because of the ideology, they just double down anyway.
Right. And the consequences are real. It's not just about hurt feelings in HR. Riker talks about a competence crisis.
Cars that don't hold the road.
Failed startups, broken supply chains. He says this happens when you swap out meritocracy for identity politics.
You get a system that cares more about optics than outcomes.
And this connects to the broader pathologizing of masculinity itself. I mean, we hear the term toxic masculinity everywhere.
Constantly. But Riker argues this isn't a medical diagnosis, it's a political weapon.
A weapon to criminalize normal male behavior. Competitiveness, stoicism, dominance.
He points to the American Psychological Association. Their 2018 and 2019 guidelines literally declared traditional masculinity harmful.
They pathologized the traits that built civilization.
And he notes the backlash was immediate. There was a 47% drop in male therapist membership.
Because men realized, these people don't want to help me. They want to deconstruct me.
And then society turns around and tells men, just open up, be vulnerable.
Riker calls this the lie of vulnerability.
The double bind.
Exactly. The book argues that society tells men to cry and share their feelings. But when they actually do, they're often viewed as weak or even repulsive, especially in the dating market.
Riker says men don't need safe spaces to cry. They need purpose and action.
And the suicide stats he presents back that up in a chilling way. Men make up 80% of suicides.
8%.
And Riker argues this isn't because men aren't talking about their feelings enough. It's because of a lack of purpose and the constant demonization of their core identity.
He basically says we are trying to treat male despair with female solutions.
Right. Talking in circles works for women, perhaps. But Riker argues men need to build, fix, and do.
When you take that away, when you ban brotherhood, you get despair.
Which brings us to the war on brotherhood.
This was honestly one of the most fascinating parts of the book for me. The idea that institutions are actually afraid of men bonding.
Riker's theory is that institutions don't fear male violence, they fear male unity.
Because a man alone can be controlled.
He can be medicated, he can be fired.
But a brotherhood cannot.
Right. He uses the example of that Navy SEALs poker game in Coronado.
Oh, yeah.
No therapist, no trauma processing, just guys playing cards, smoking cigars, bonding. 40 years later, they were living longer and had lower stress than their peers.
But Riker contrasts this with how universities and prisons are actively banning male-only spaces.
He mentions the UK prison ban on male-only support groups.
Despite the insanely high male suicide rates there.
Right, and Harvard cracking down on all-male clubs while completely allowing female-only alliances to thrive.
It's that double standard again.
It goes back to the dad factor as well.
Yeah.
Riker argues the state has delegitimized fatherhood specifically to create dependency.
The stat he cites, boys without fathers are 5 times more likely to end up in prison.
5 times. So the book is really a call for unbreakable brotherhoods. And for fathers to stop being visitors and start being kings in their own homes.
It's about leadership, leading without apology. But let's switch gears to where this hits really hard for a lot of young guys tuning in. The dating market.
Riker paints a pretty bleak picture here.
Very bleak.
He calls it the app trap. He cites Tinder stats showing 89% of matches happen in the first 7 seconds, based purely on visuals.
So Riker argues these apps have just gamified male insecurity.
Yes. Women, he claims, are competing for a tiny percentage of top-tier men, the ones with the right jawline or height, while the vast majority of men are practically invisible.
He calls it a sex recession.
He notes that 68% of young men now have no close male friends, and they are retreating from dating entirely because the return on investment just isn't there.
They're just opting out.
Opting out of the game completely.
And while men are opting out, the language around them is changing rapidly. Riker talks about language hijacking.
This is where he critiques terms like chest feeding or birthing people.
Riker argues this erases women and confuses biological reality, but he also focuses heavily on Title IX's.
Right, a law meant to protect women's sports and education.
But Riker argues it's now being used to allow biological males into female spaces, which effectively destroys fair competition.
He sees this as the ultimate gaslighting, telling us that what we plainly see with our own eyes isn't real.
It's a lot to process. It feels like the walls are closing in from every side. Education, work, dating, language.
It does. But Riker doesn't just leave us in the wreckage.
Right, Theme 6, the reclamation. He offers a solution.
And importantly, the solution isn't more therapy, it's action.
He references that Harvard study on dopamine.
Yes, it turns out manual labor fixing things, building things with your hands releases sustained dopamine.
A steady burn of satisfaction.
Exactly, unlike the jagged spikes you get from social media likes or video games.
So the advice is basically get off your phone and go build a fence.
Essentially, yes. He points to the philosophy of Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius, or the veteran Frank Nangi, who left a diary that just said, keep moving.
The core message is defiance.
Riker writes, you don't need permission to be a man.
That's the call to arms. Stop apologizing.
Correct. Reject the victimhood culture. Learn a trade. Build a family. The book argues that the only way to win is to stop playing the game by their rules.
Construct your own reality based on competence and biological truth.
So if we pull all this together, Riker's central message is that truth is the most subversive force. He's calling for men to wake up, reject the matrix of these modern feminist and Marxist institutions, and reclaim their biological destiny as protectors and builders.
And he leaves us with a very provocative final thought in the book. He writes, progress isn't measured by how many men you can medicate into docility. It's measured by how many families you can feed.
It's a complete return to the provider ethic as the ultimate measure of worth.
That is powerful stuff.
It really makes you think.
It does. And, looking at all this source material, it makes me wonder about something Riker doesn't explicitly spell out, but it feels like the logical conclusion of this competence crisis and the sex recession.
What's that?
Well, if men are biologically driven to be the builders and maintainers of society's physical infrastructure, the glass cellar jobs, the power grids, the supply chains, what happens to a society when a massive chunk of those men just decide to permanently opt out of the social contract?
That's a terrifying thought. If the providers stop providing, the whole system just grinds to a halt.
Exactly. It's not just a dating issue. It could become a total structural collapse, something for you all to mull over. But look, we've covered a lot today,
Yeah.
and we really have just scratched the surface of what's in this book.
Definitely. There are entire chapters on dyslexia, on the legal system, on the long history of these policies that we just didn't have time to get into today.
So if you want the full arsenal of facts, all the data tables, the historical arguments, you need to read the source material.
Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks right now and buy Celebrating Failures, Victim Entitlement Signaling Culture, of Poor Me Feminism, and Craberly Darvo.
Support Conrad Riker. He's putting his neck on the line to put this stuff out there.
And you can follow him for more daily insights. He's at Conrad Riker on Twitter and at Conrad Riker on YouTube.
And make sure to check out his Substack at conradriker.substack.com. He's building a real community over there.
It's definitely worth a look if you want to truly understand the mechanics of what's happening in our culture.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for this deep dive. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with a friend who needs to hear the truth. Stop apologizing, start building. We'll see you next time.